Still Poddable, still Poddable. The Boston Celtics still Poddable, still Poddable. Oh yeah. Still Poddable, still Poddable. The Boston Celtics still Poddable, still Poddable. Banner 18.
J. King and Packard and Brian
Still Poddable, still Poddable.
The Jay-Z White in the catalog.
Still Poddable, still Poddable.
The kids are legends to go.
Still Poddable, still Poddable, still Poddable. The Boston Celtics still Poddable, still Poddable. Oh yeah.
I just had to go to a bathroom.
Welcome into Still Poddable. This is the free version on the CLNS YouTube, powered by Prize Picks. Use promo code CLNS on Prize Picks. You'll get deposit match up to $100. This is Still Poddable, the best Celtics podcast Monday through Friday. If you want more Still Poddable, find us on patreon.com/Still Poddable. I am Sam Jam Packard, joined by Brian B. Robb from masslive.com, and we got some actual news, B-Rob. For the past couple of weeks, it's been mostly analyzing games that do not matter, but we got some news that actually matters. Jrue Holiday signing a 4-year, what was the total number? $130 million extension?
135, I believe. Yes.
That's a lot of money for the second oldest player on the Celtics roster. That was my first reaction. It was like, wow, they're going to be paying him a lot of money for a lot of years. I don't know how it works out with the cap going up, and maybe we should be looking at this as percentage of the cap. But my first reaction is, holy moly, that's a lot.
Is definitely a sign of a good agent when it's a situation where they know they have the Celtics not over a barrel here, but essentially being like, okay, yeah, we know that it'd help you guys out a lot if we take less next year and beyond that, but what do we get for doing that? And how about 4 years, essentially the same contract you got 4 years ago? We'll just run it back. And like you said, the percentage of the cap changes. So it's certainly not apples and oranges in that front, but Jrue Holiday is going to be making a lot of money at 37 years old. And just like Al Horford kind of did when, like, in his career, like at the end of the line, got that one last big deal. Jrue Holiday did now too. How that ages out will be the big question here, but in the short term, this certainly creates an even rosier outlook for this team, I feel like.
I mean, it's great for keeping this core together. The big question for me is like, well, what does this mean for the Derek White extension? Because Jaylen Brown's giant extension kicks in this offseason. Tatum's going to sign a giant extension that's going to kick in the following offseason. And so we have some wiggle room for the Celtics in terms of when all of that money is going to need to be spent. But are they 2 years from now, are they going to be willing to be a team that's in the past the second apron? There's come a lot of restrictions with that.
Well past the second apron in 2 years.
And so Kristaps has still on the books then. What does this mean for Derek White? Are they just going to say, hey, we just are this core five just produced the best regular season in 15 years. Why would we not spend money to keep it together? But that was my logical next question, because I didn't know if they were be willing to do both a Holiday and a Derek White extension. And if it was me, I would pick Derek White, just him being a younger player, kind of a more dynamic player on offense. But maybe they're just willing to spend money any which way, in which case everyone should get paid. I should get an extension.
Just a matter of time. Still Poddable joins the Celtics organization with or Packard specifically. But yeah, it's this is a classic with the Celtics checkbook being like, listen, we're gonna figure this out later. The vibes are too good right now. Jrue Holiday has been the ultimate, good teammate during this season, and everyone else is under contract through next year. And so if we leave this kind of hanging out there, then that does create just a little bit of uncertainty for Holiday, and kind of shows an example of like, hey, we take care of our people when they, buy into the team concept. But as far as all your big picture questions, Packard, are very fair, because not only, again, the contract here makes running it back next year just very doable. Like it's a number that they don't have to even lose anyone else in the roster. Essentially, they're going to be spending a lot. They're going to be over the second year, but they're going to have limitations. But if they want to bring it back next year, they can. After that, it's who knows. And I think it's all going to come down to what happens these next 2 years in the playoffs. And certainly one option would be like, hey, maybe ownership just is willing to spend record amounts. And that would be very, very pleasing to the Celtics fan base, because technically there's nothing that keeping them from doing that beyond just insane luxury tax penalties, which are set to be due. But the other factor is, like someone in all likelihood is going to have to go. And the important thing about this for the Celtics in this contract now, it's like, do they think all these contracts they have in their books, those are going to have good value around the league no matter what? So it's like, if they do have to pull this apart, and if they decide, hey, we do want to keep Derek White on extension over Jrue Holiday or Jaylen Brown or whoever, like, we're going to be able to still get a lot for player X down the line. And I think that's with this deal, I think they probably feel pretty confident they're going to be able to do that if this is the deal that ends up being on the chopping block.
Yeah, and I think that short-term, long-term perspective is important. Like this, Drew's already making $36 million this year, so it's not like it's a drastic change in his current contract situation, and so it's that much easier to run it back. There is, like, I think, pretty sure you're probably more knowledgeable about the cap than I am, but there's a new TV deal coming in. I don't know if it's this year or next year, and so you got to anticipate that the cap is going to go up at least. I think the max amount it can go up each year is 10%.
Yep.
So what, $35 million maybe 2 years from now is just not going to be as much of a financial burden. And maybe even it's a deal that's more movable. I'm assuming they'll do some sort of cap smoothing to avoid the kind of Kevin Durant going to the Warriors, because everyone just all of a sudden has giant cap space now. I think they might have learned from that mistakes. Hopefully the players union learned from that mistake, because as much as like Al-Farouq Aminu benefited from that free agency class, there's a bunch of subsequent free agents who didn't. And so I think it's an interesting deal. It keeps the squad together for then like immediate future, and then future Brad has to deal with, and future Mike Zarin will have to deal with whatever that larger cap number is. And I think I think one of the more interesting questions is, like, it's not like Jrue Holiday has taken a downturn in his terms of his talent, but he's going to be 37 by the end of that contract. Guards traditionally age differently than kind of bigger players. I feel like all of our collective minds in Celtics lands are a bit skewed just by watching Al Horford continue to be excellent. Like, that's not normal. Players normally, like, the prime of their careers is 28, 29, and it's usually a downhill from there. Drew's in extremely good shape, and I think that you would anticipate him still being effective, but just for guards in general, they're normally not great after 35.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, we've seen it firsthand. Just guards in their 30s, undersized guards, particularly in this organization, the last 10 years have not aged out well at all. Jrue Holiday is a little bit of a bigger guard. Like you said, the body type you probably feel a little bit better about. And yeah, it's like, and clearly, I think the big thing for the Celtics is like the 3-point shooting looks to like seems to be getting better with age, like it has it up with Al Horford. And that's a skill along with his defense that is certainly going to translate. They hope clearly for at least the beginning of this deal. And it's funny though, because like Jrue, a couple years ago, I don't know if you saw the interview Packard when he was on, I think with Evan Turner and Andrew Iguodala, and he talked about like, oh, is this like, was this, he was going to talk about retiring like around when his current contract ended, so maybe at the end of next season. And now,
maybe he just retires, and maybe we don't have to think any of this. Yeah.
And he does. I mean, he also does have a player option at the end of this deal. I think Adam Himmelsbach reported that first. But this is but yeah, like it's gone officially where it's like, oh, I might retire now, but like, oh, I'm gonna get an extra $130 million.
I might stick around for $35 million a year for the next couple of years. But
do you see any drop off though for him? This like I guess usage, it's like, yeah, you don't feel good about him being a number one or a number two, but do you feel like he can, like, is this contract gonna look like an albatross to you in 3 years? Do you think this is where he could be like, you know what, he could pull an Al Horford here and just be a good value the whole way through?
I think like if he is just playing on a team with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and doesn't necessarily need to be a high usage individual, I think it's super. There's like a lot of potential for this to work out. I also him just being out. I think it's an overpay if he becomes like a 6-man role like Al. Like I think Al, the beauty of that contract or his extensions is that they were like able to kind of come down on salary as his role kind of got more reduced. I think if Jrue Holiday in the 3rd and 4th years of this extension is just a guy coming off the bench making $35 million, then it's probably an overpay. But I don't see any like real signs of him like taking a decline in performance. But that's just like also because we haven't really seen like him have to, I'm not going to say exert himself. He's an NBA player who's tried very hard in all these games, but it's not like he's had to shoulder the burden of like carrying a team. And so I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. Presumably the Celtics think he's going to be fine because they probably wouldn't give him a player option in year 4, but we'll see.
It is. I mean, the way the deal is set up is obviously very friendly to Jrue and his camp because, getting that player option is like, oh, maybe he wants to get one more deal at the end of or at least certainly be able to opt out. And at that point, maybe he makes a more team friendly deal at that point where he gets a couple more extra years and with the reduced, cap hit for the present for the Celtics or whatever team he's on at that point. But Holiday's campaign, they knew like you looked at the offseason here, Packard. There's not a lot of good free agency names hitting the market. And the guys that are hitting the market are probably going to re-sign with their own teams, like a Pascal Siakam, if you will. So the Celtics clearly, like, I think both sides liked each other here, but Holiday was like, listen, I can go get a max contract from like the Sixers probably, or the Orlando Magic. So do you guys want to like see if I can do that? Or do you want to take care of this now? And if you do want me to take care of this now, then you got to give me all 4 years. And so that's I think negotiation 101 there.
Yeah, and I think it makes perfect sense for the Celtics to be like, let's not mess up the team that's up 14 games in the Eastern Conference.
Right.
Like, no matter what happens in the playoffs, like you're gonna run it back. You're pretty limited in what you can do. Even if there's like a colossal choke in the playoffs, like you're gonna run it back and just try to figure out what went wrong because the core of the roster here is clearly high functioning, and so I think it's a move that makes sense for both sides.
It's funny. Like this is literally the last question mark you have about this team right now. And
other than the whole performance in the playoffs.
Performance in the playoffs. But any lingering questions beyond, like I said, core performance is gone because now literally all 8 players, Packard, all top 8 players are signed through next season now. And I guess if you're Derek White's camp, maybe you see this deal and you're like, this is make things a little tougher for us. It's like the odds of them getting the extension maybe go down this offseason because of this, but he might, like we've talked about, like, is he at a point now where he's like, I can't even sign that extension because I want more money than the rules allow me to get anyway from the Celtics. Yeah,
I think it's the most interesting for Derek White, but for this year, for the next, like this year and all of next season, the squad is locked in, the squad's playing well. And so I think it makes sense for everyone involved. We're going to take a break, hear from our friends at Prize Picks, and we'll be back on the other side, either in the future or in the past. I'm not sure yet.
Still Poddable, still Poddable. The Boston still Poddable, still Poddable. Oh, yeah.
Go down from eating and drinking and all that wild stuff.